are Tombow markers. It says so right there. These have been around for quite a while. Most of you older artists like myself are probably familiar with them and probably have a few yourself. For those of you that are not as familiar with these, I am going to be spending this video going over them right now. Hello everybody, my name is Phil. I am a freelance artist and cartoonist, and on today's show I am introducing Marker Monday, and for Marker Monday the markers I want to mark up with are Tombow twin touch markers. Sorry, twin tip markers. Twin something markers. Twin because they have two ends to them. As I said, most people I think are familiar with them. They have a little tiny fine point end, which is for fine lining, and then the other end is a brush end, which most people like to use the most. We're going to go over more of the details on this very shortly. I started buying these in small packs of either 9 or 10. I think it's 10 you can usually get them. And in some cases, most cases, unless they're a specialized set, one of them is a blender. Such as what I've got right here. The markers you can usually find at just about any art store, Michael's especially. You can usually pick up a pack of 10 for, in Canada anyways, about 28 to 30 bucks. You can usually get them at a better price if you wait for the sales. You can get them down as low as 15, 16, 17 bucks. I also can get them at Curry's. Curry's is unique only to Ontario, Canada, but they are like the artist store. They are amazing. They're kind of like the Blicks for Ontario in a way. And they have a little better prices than Michael's as well. I started buying these in sets of, individual sets of 10, only intending to get a few of them. And I got kind of a little obsessed with them, and I ended up buying so many that I ended up buying the case. You can actually get the case. If you really like them, you can buy the entire case of, I believe, 308 colors. I'll have to double check that number. I'll find out shortly for you. And I thought today what I'll do is I'll go over how to use these, because if you're not familiar with them, they are a water-based marker. These are not alcohol-based, and there is a big difference between the two and how you use them. If you're used to alcoholic markers and you're buying these expecting to use them the same way, you are going to be incredibly disappointed and want to throw them out the window. Don't do that. They are a unique marker, and you just have to work with them a little differently. You can't really work in large areas like you do with alcoholic markers. You'll see most of the demos online for them are usually for writing, and they are really fantastic for that. I kind of don't want to go over that, because if you want to learn how to write with them, there's actually a million demos on how to write with them. But what you don't see very often is how to paint with them. Now, as I was saying, they are better for smaller pictures. They're better for tighter little areas. They're better for touch-ups. You can even work with them with, use them with watercolors. But today I just want to use them straight on their own, and the only thing I'm going to be using with them is a fine liner, and I'm going to use the Pigma Micron markers. And again, you can usually get sets of like 3 or 5 or 10. Michael's, Curry's, Blicks. You can get these anywhere. These are sort of the go-to fine line markers, and they're really good. They're also a water-based marker, so I want to kind of use these with the Tombows and see how they work together. I can tell you just quickly offhand, they actually work very well together, but you want to use them properly because it depends on how wet the paper is and that kind of thing. So I'm not going to sit here yakking much longer, and I keep making noises with this thing. That's the one thing is this set. They're on your desk, they rattle quite a bit. Noisy thing. All right, I also, when I bought so many of these, I ended up getting a whole bunch of duplicates, so I'm going to start with a duplicate so I can use them up today. And with that, let's go. All right, I have my little setup here ready to go. Here are the Tombow markers here just in this container, the ones that I'm going to use today. I can show you a little bit better look at them. As you can see, they are a little on the longer side than, say, Copics or most of your alcohol-based markers. As I explained earlier, they have two tips, one on each end, as a lot of these markers mostly usually do. There's the fine tip, and then there's a brush tip on these ones, which is actually a very nice tip, actually. There's good brush tips and bad ones, and these are actually quite nice. The markers on their own retail, I know in Canada for about $3.50 at Michael's. Actually, most art stores, I think you'll find them about the same price. Again, you can get them in the packs of 10, which are, I think, $27 the last time I checked. And or you can get it in the big set. The big sets are 108. I forget the number I quoted earlier, and I think I made a mistake, but you can get the full spectrum of 108 markers. Here's a little color guide. These little color charts, these all come in each of the sets of 10. They are also blending palettes, which I can show you in just a few moments. And while I get this ready, if you could take a moment and maybe click the subscribe button, a bell notification, even a thumbs up would be really helpful, just because I'm trying to get this channel going. I'm going to just bring this out for a test. I'm going to do a little bit of a demo. You see, most demos for these markers are usually in writing. I'm not going to do a lot of that today. As you can see, these are quite vibrant. The colors on these are very strong. They're not terribly light fast, which means that exposed to sunlight or bright lights, they will fade over time. Unfortunately, that's just the case with most markers, whether they be alcohol-based or water-based. Here's the fine line, as you can see. If you're really looking for like a super fine line, this is probably not it. But as a general fine marker, this kind of works. You find most people do prefer the brush tip. Now, as I said earlier, they do blend. They just don't blend like alcohol-based markers. And if you try to blend them like alcohol-based markers, they will make a mess. This strip of paper is just a little bit of, it's a heavier base paper. It's not Bristol, but it is heavier than normal paper. And I know that if I try to put down some color like this marker is slowly starting to go. Then I try and do this and try and blend them the same way as I would with alcohol-based markers. It will start to gum the paper up, and you will see it. It doesn't pull the color like it does with alcohol-based. It starts to soak into the paper, the fibers come up, and it just makes a mess. So you can't do a lot of in-paper blending like this. They really just don't work that way, unfortunately. But what they do, the way you can play with it, works a little bit differently. These you have to think of them as a completely different tool on their own. So that's where these come in, because you can actually put down some of the color on these, and you can use a paintbrush. I have a simple little watercolor brush. Because of this plastic surface, you can see it the water the dye rather kind of beads up a little bit, but it will keep like this for a while. And because it is water-based dyes, you can just keep adding water to it if you want to. If it starts to dry, add a bit of water to it and it loosens it up like this. Then you can actually brush it. And you can even go back into this and brush it to try and blend it. But again, the more you play with it, the more you're going to pull up the fibers in this. It's better really to try and not wet the paper as much as you can. So let's put down, you can even blend them right on here to make new colors if you need to. I'll do that in just a minute. So you see, you can kind of do it like this. I know this is small. Maybe I can try and zoom into this when I go into editing. I said earlier, you can blend it all together and make a whole new color if you need to. But the more you add water, the more it dilutes the color, right? So you can see this is much softer than what you're getting directly with the marker. Don't go using these like watercolors. You can't take this and color in a huge area. You will get it just doesn't work. It streaks a lot, and it looks terrible. This is really actually for small little things like this that I've made for this demo. It's much more conducive to its smaller, tighter area, really. And that's why I think these are great for if you're doing little greeting cards or little crafts that are small, and for lettering. Because it is smaller and narrow, you can do things like a little bit of tight blending and it will work much better. I almost forgot, as I said earlier, each set comes with its own blender. I have tried these. I find, again, it's the same thing. It just lifts, and I find they don't really work that well. You can spread the color out a little bit if you need to. If you're doing a small area, maybe like lettering, maybe it'll blend it. Kind of, but I find it just lifts the color and pushes it around, as opposed to actually blending the two together. It just seems to, I don't know, I don't really like them that much. The nice little thing about these two, I forgot to mention when I was describing the marker earlier, the cap comes with this little knob on the side of it here. I don't know if you can see that very well, but it's nice that it keeps it from rolling. So without that, these do tend to roll very easily. So that's a nice thing. And as well, what I also forgot to mention earlier, all the colors are numbered. With these charts, it shows you the numbering system that it goes with. You can put them in if you happen to get the big case, you can put them in the case this way. And it helps keep track of the colors. And they are fairly accurate. The colors are pretty accurate to what you put down on the paper. There's two different systems. Oh, it's on this one. Here's the other one that they've got. It's the same idea. This one actually just happens to give the name of the color on it, as opposed to this just giving you the number. So it's a nice way to kind of keep track of your colors and which ones you have and which ones you don't. Because there's only 108, it's not as complicated as, say, like the big Copic sets, but what they have actually works pretty well. These are a lot of fun. As I said, they're not alcohol markers. They are watercolor markers, and they are kind of their own thing. Once you learn how to use them, they can be a lot of fun, though. Especially if you're just doing something small. Something, too, I'll explain a little later, is that because they are a die, when you put it down on the paper, you'll find that the dye travels with the water to the edge of what you've painted. It travels to the edge of the wet area, and so it builds up a bit of dark color around that and creates a bit of an odd effect that you don't get with the alcohol-based markers, but you will find you'll get with these. Another thing to note, if these are pricey, like I said earlier, these are about $3.50 a marker. You can get sets of the Artist Loft through Michaels. Very similar. They work pretty much the same way. There's not quite as many colors, and in my comparison, I don't think they're as quite as flexible and quite as vibrant as the Tombow. But if you're looking for a cheaper option, they are something you can go with, and they do go on sale quite frequently. These right now, I think at the moment, are on sale for a set of 10 for $16, normally $27. So have a look though, check in your Michaels listings and see. Let's pull this guy over because I want to test this. I made these up. I drew pencil and I drew one in ink because I wanted to see how the markers will respond to them. Because you can put a rough pencil down, paint, and then ink over it, and we'll see how it works with having just putting it straight over top of ink. And because it is watercolor, I'm telling you, it is going to drag the black ink a little bit. We're going to see how much and how badly, especially since I did this last night. It's definitely very dry now. So let's have a look. So let's go back to Mr. Fishy, and I'm going to bring some of this light blue back into this. I hope I'm not leaning in here too far. I am going to have to zoom into this, I think. I'm still getting very used to this whole YouTube thing and how this is going to work. My camera is up a little bit too high, I think, for what I wanted, but it's a nice Logitech Brio. I can't complain. I just need a better setup. But this is just going in here and let's see how this works. I'm not going to be too overly. I'm not want to be too fussy about it. It does not. It doesn't even work like watercolor paints. Again, don't try and use them like paints. They really are their own thing, and you have to play with them to get a proper feel for them. So let me let that dry. If you try to put ink this down while it's wet, it's going to do exactly what you think it's going to do. This will, it will just bleed out. And I can already see it doing a little bit of what I was saying earlier. A small area, you don't have to worry about too much, but if you start working in a larger area, that's when you are going to start to notice that weird effect that I was telling you about earlier, where it tends to collect around the edges. Oop, that was more than I thought there. I had more on the brush than I thought I did. It's very subtle. It doesn't have a lot of weight to it, this paint. That's probably a little oversaturated, but that's okay. Actually, it looks better on the camera. Now, I don't have a flesh color in this, but I do have one in my set. So let me bring this out. Now, this one, I've already done the kid's face. I wonder if I should go directly with the marker. No, I'm going to do something else here. Oh, this is really subtle. You can't even see this. These, I don't even know if this shows on camera that much. Oh yeah, it does actually. It shows more on camera. It's a very, very subtle difference. I'm going to put these down and just kind of blend them a little bit. I'm going to get some of that blue out of there because I'm going to mix those together. Wow, that's very subtle. I might actually just come back right in with the marker. Yeah, that's not seeing a lot there. That's all right. It is a very soft color. But that's actually a good start. Let's try this. This is a little bit darker again. No, it's not. That looks the same. 990. These, I got two 990s in there. All right, you're going back. I think it's going to be hard for you to pick it up, and it is kind of going a little out of focus here. It is. Oh, that's terrible. It is starting to, yeah, the autofocus isn't going to pick that up. Sorry. It is going to pull the black ink a little bit. So I'm going to let this dry. See, this looks a little more pink. I can put a little blush on the face. And this is a little darker. Now I can come in here just with a straight brush. Now this lighting, for some reason, makes this look a little green. This is where adding a little bit of water might be okay around the edge, just a bit on the cheeks. Here. I get lost in my work sometimes a little bit, and I forget what I'm doing. You know, I'm supposed to be talking. If you have a set of these, by all means, you can follow along. That's very dark. This shows as being lighter. I guess it's just a different brown. $2,947. It's good. I had some duplicates in this set still. I thought I got rid of them all. That's okay. Bring this in, and then by lightening a little bit, it'll add a little bit of a light, effective light there to the top of his head. Again, not too much because it'll end up gumming up the paper. You can, if you want to lift the color a little bit, you can go back in like watercolors and dampen it, and then lift it with a bit of paper towel. Again, you're gumming up the paper quite a bit. Oh, and you can see as well that really it's dye. Dye just kind of pushes around, right? It's not really. It's not a watercolor. It's not like watercolor paint. It's staining the paper. Dry, dry, dry. Alright, so the water is still somewhat wet, so although it hasn't bled out, there's definitely a sense that this is pushing into the paper. So what I can do though is I can maybe go in with the blue marker and just to add a little bit of shadow under there. You can see it's not, you're getting a little bit of a look similar to alcohol markers, but not really. Same thing with this one. You can play with them and blend them out. As I said, the process is just a bit different. It's a really dark green. This is what they're really nice for, is though you can do these nice light washes with light color and then go back in and just add a little bit of detail with the actual marker itself. There's some nice grays. It does have a nice set of gray tones that come with set, and some of them come with each set of 10 might come with a different degree of a gray, and so I wouldn't put gray. Ooh, that's really dark. Here's a nice soft gray. I would never normally put gray in for something like this, but I'm just playing around with them. So let's go to a larger sheet. Pull out the large one just to show you a little bit more with the wash and see if I can get that effect that I was telling you about, where it collects to the edge. I'll get a larger brush for it. We got lots of this blue, so let's keep adding blue. That's kind of a gross blue. It's a greenish blue actually, but there we go. Put a bunch of the ink down. I had actually did this already and I found I had to redo it. There was some problems and I ended up having to redo this. I've done it already. I think the stuff is on the back. I started to do a tree, which I didn't end up finishing, so that's alright. I've done a few of those. I'll show you how to do that in a moment. So let's just gather all this up and make this kind of nice blue, and I'm going to add a lot of water to it. And I would almost say even wet the paper. This is now watercolor paper. It's only 90 pounds. It's not like the really heavy stuff, but this will hold, it responds to the dye a little bit better than, say, this bond stuff that I was using, the smooth stuff. So as you can see here, there's some nice texturing in the paper. but it soaks in because it's a dye. It soaks in very fast. It doesn't pull down like watercolor does, and you can't play with it as much. It goes in, and that's kind of it. Once it's done, as you can see. But I wanted to create a little bit of an effect with this here so you can get an idea of what I'm telling you. You've probably seen it. You probably know what I'm referring to. Add more water to it. You really do want to try and kind of brush your water out, because when it bleeds, like watercolor, actual watercolors will kind of soak and blend in. These don't. They really do just kind of sit and collect. So you do want to kind of push it around a bit. And you can kind of see at the top of this sort of faded mountain range I'm putting in, you're seeing what I'm doing. So I'm kind of trying to work with that effect and see if I can make it do something in this. I'm looking at the monitor to my right, and it is a little softer on the monitor than what I'm seeing in person. Now, what I was doing with the tree earlier, that's kind of a nice effect with trees, is you can use a little bit of stippling effect with these, which is really nice. So if I was to do kind of a tree with this, I should have got the other brush. And nice soft branches here for the tree. You can come in with these markers and just kind of do this kind of effect with it. What I might do actually is I would probably get a bit of green going first as a little bit of a base, and then go in with that over top, unless you're working this full area, but this is kind of a little bit larger. Oh, I just about put the marker right in. I just stuck the marker right in. And it adds a bit of a nice soft dark back base to it. Because then you can go back in, even though this is wet, this would actually make maybe a nice effect with it, how the bleeding might actually I think it kind of does. It makes a little bit of a nice effect with it. And the nice thing is when you get different sets with different kinds of greens, you can come in with different. This one doesn't show up quite as much. Get closer to the top of the trees here. I'm not going to spend a long time on this, but you can pick up a set of these really cheap, and you can kind of play with them on your own. So, yeah, you can come in with a little bit of detail if you want on the bark. This is where maybe the fine tip might come in handy. It does. That gives you a bit of a rough idea anyways. You can see what's going on. I'm going to leave it for today. On another video, I might try and go in and try these with, see how they work with alcohol-based markers or how they work with watercolors. They can work with watercolors really nice. But yeah, pick up a cheap set, grab them while they're on sale, and play around with them. Just remember, they are not alcohol-based markers. They work very differently. Work them a little more like you would with watercolor, but play around with them until you've got a feel for them, until you understand them a little bit better. And I think you will end up enjoying them a lot more at the end. And also, Tombows has also put out a set of alcohol-based markers that look similar to these, so don't get them mixed up. They do come in different kind of packaging, and I think the shafts are white as opposed to black. But anyways, if you have some of these, please let me know. Tell me what, did you get anything out of this? Have you played with these before? Do you know some other tricks that maybe I'm missing in here? But I just don't want to spend all day doing this. But anyways, thank you very much for joining me. Please remember to subscribe and thumbs up and all that good stuff. And I will see you again in another video very soon.